Good morning, Educational Center friends. This is your Assistant Principal, Miss Sarah, with today's school time activity. If you remember from yesterday, Principal Bill read you a story that talked all about the 5 senses. Let's make sure we remember those 5 senses as we get ready for today's activity. Yesterday, Principal Bill read you a story called What Does Paris Hear? You got it. Hearing is one of those 5 senses we talked about. Let's see if you remember the other ones. Make sure you think about it. You got it. The second one is using our eyes to see. We use our ears to hear, our eyes to see. What else can you think of? You got another one. Your nose to smell. Let's see if you can think of the other ones. Your mouth. You use your mouth to taste. And there's one more. You got it, using your fingers to touch and feel. So our 5 senses, our ears to hear, our eyes to see, our nose to smell, our mouth to taste, and our hands, our fingers to touch and feel. Those are our 5 senses. As I get ready for our story today, we're going to talk about one of those senses. And that sense is one of our vocabulary words, our eyes. Our eyes are one of the vocabulary words we're going to talk about today. And the 5 senses, the one that we use with our eyes is our second vocabulary word today, see. We use our eyes to see. That is the sense we're going to talk about today. It's one of our vocabulary words. When we talk about using our eyes to see, our story today talks about things that we want to do when we see in the dark, when the lights are down and it's very dim. It is dark and it's hard to see. And the opposite of dark is our other vocabulary word today, and that is light. When it's bright and sunny, the sun is shining and it's easy to see, it is light. So those 4 vocabulary words we're talking about in our story today, the dark, the light, and using our eyes to see. Those are the 4 vocabulary words in the story that I'm going to read you today. The story I'm reading you today is called Grumpy Mr. G. Let's listen to that word and think a little bit about that title. Grumpy Mr. G. The word grumpy, my face looks kind of mad, kind of angry, arms are crossed, kind of grumpy. Mr. G is grumpy, and today we're going to find out why. As I read you the story today, we have one learning goal to focus on. The learning goal, as I've written it up here, I will remember one kind of curtain Mr. G hangs up in his room. That learning goal asks you to remember one of the curtains that he will hang up today. That learning goal gives me some clues about the story we're going to read. In today's story, as I do my picture walk, Mr. G has some sunlight coming through his window, and he's starting to think about hanging up some curtains. You can see the curtain. He wants to make the room dark. So as I read the story today, I want you to think about the kinds of curtains he's going to hang up. And at the end, I'm going to ask you if you remember one of those curtains. Let's get started with our story. Remember to put those thinking caps on, turn those listening ears on, and see if we can remember. The title of our story is Grumpy Mr. G. The author, the person who wrote the words in our story, is right here in the byline by Emily Weinberger. That is our author. The illustrator, the person who made all the pictures for us today, is Todd Gardner. Let's get started and see if you can remember one of those curtains he hangs up today. Mr. G is grumpy. His window is made of clear glass. The sun shines through his window. The light is shining into his eyes. Oh, this wakes him up every morning. If you look at Mr. G, he still looks pretty grumpy. All of that light is shining in his eyes and it's waking him up. Wonder what he's gonna do about that. Mr. G needs to sleep. He wants to make his room dark. There's one of our vocabulary words, dark. He wants to make the room dark. Curtains can help make his room dark. Mr. G goes out to the store and he buys some different curtains. I wonder what kind of curtains he's going to buy. Let's see what happened. Mr. G hangs up thin white curtains. He pulls those curtains closed. He goes to bed at night. What do you think, friends? Will he get some sleep? Those curtains are thin and white. I wonder if it will make the room light or dark. Let's see what happened. The next morning, Mr. G wakes up early. Light is shining in his eyes. He sees lots of light coming through the curtains. The curtains are too thin and white. They did not make the room dark. It was still very light, he could see. Mr. G hangs up different curtains. This time they have black and white stripes. He pulls the curtains closed. He goes to bed at night. What do you think, friends? Will Mr. G get some more sleep? Black and white stripes. I wonder if that will be enough to make the room dark or not. Let's see what happens. The next morning, Mr. G wakes up early. Light is shining in his eyes. He sees sunlight coming through the curtains. The curtains only keep out some of the light. They did not make his room dark. He still looks pretty grumpy. Those arms are crossed. His face is mad. He's still seeing the light. Still awake. He's grumpy. Wonder what he's gonna do. Mr. G then hangs up thick black curtains. Oh, look at this, my friends. They look pretty dark. He pulls the curtains closed. He goes to bed. Will Mr. G get some more sleep? What will happen? Think about it. Now that they're nice and dark, will it let in any light? Oh, I'm hearing you say no. I think you're right. The next morning, Mr. G wakes up later. The light does not come through the curtains. His room is very dark. It's hard to see anything. Oh, I think I see a smile on his face. He's starting to seem happy. Mr. G is not grumpy anymore. The thick black curtains blocked out the light. He did not wake up early. Now he will be able to sleep more. You called it, my friends. Mr. G is happy. The end. Oh, my Ed Center friends, he was able to put up curtains that blocked out the light and made it dark so that his eyes could not see, and he was able to sleep. I wonder now if you remember my one learning goal for today was to remember one kind of curtain that he hung up in his room. And to help us with answering those questions, I printed a storyboard. So let's put up that storyboard and let's see if you can remember one kind of curtain Mr. G hangs up in his room. You could use my storyboard and tell me it was a white curtain. You could tell me it was a black curtain, or you could tell me it was a striped curtain, and all three of those answers would be right. We also could use this storyboard and answer some other questions. I could do a little bit more talking about my story and ask you a few more questions. And I'm going to use the cover of my story as we talk about it. The first one is, what is the name of the story? If you remember when I started reading, I told you that is called the title. The title is Grumpy Mr. G. That is the title of my book. You could even use your storyboard to tell me Grumpy Mr. G. If I asked you who wrote the story, that's called the author, and that is Emily Weinberger. That is the author. I could even ask you who drew the picture. You could again go back to the cover and tell me it's Todd Gardner. That is the illustrator. Then I could ask you some more questions, and I can set down the title of my book, and I can use my storyboard. So if I asked you, who are the people in the story, you could go to my storyboard vocabulary word, and you could tell me Mr. G is the character in my story. If I asked you, where does the story happen? What is the setting? You could go back and tell me it was Mr. G's bedroom. That's where the story took place. If I asked you what happened in the story, what are the events, you could tell me that Grumpy Mr. G had curtains. He had to hang curtains to block the light in his bedroom. You could tell me that story. You could tell me the curtains were white, the curtains were black, the curtains were striped. You could tell me that they block the light in his bedroom. You could use all of those pictures to communicate about your learning. And the very last question is all about who is telling the story. The person telling the story is called the narrator. And they give me two options. Is it the author, the person who wrote the words? Or is it the character? Was Mr. G the one telling the story? In the story today, the narrator was the author. She was the one telling the story today. Wow, my Educational Center friends, it was so fun to read stories with you today. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, and I can't wait to see you all again soon. Bye-bye.